Hello and welcome to the Cybernaut Gaming channel. So today's video I'm going to be talking about why I switched to Linux mostly for my daily usage. Last week I had turned my PC off when it was time to go to bed, and it started an update even though I configured it not to do any updates. And I boot my PC up in the morning and lo and behold I am stuck in a Windows boot loop. No matter what I did, I tried a number of things to rectify the situation. It was just apparent that I was just not going to be able to get back into my Windows install. I had helped friends earlier with this issue before, and I'd been successful at fixing it, but this time I don't know why it was different. And the last time I had to reinstall Windows was about a year ago, and I had to reinstall because my OS was corrupted. I couldn't launch any games, I couldn't launch any programs without getting any of these ridiculous error codes. So I thought to myself, there's nothing from preventing this from happening again. And I'm kind of tired of reinstalling Windows, it seems like at least once or twice a year because of some stupid thing that keeps happening. So that's where I got this idea to switch to Linux. And fortunately, I have experience with Linux before from my school. And at school, they make a lot of the computer science students use Fedora Workstation in order to get their assignments done. And I would use that, but honestly, I thought that Ubuntu had better support and a better community in case I needed help with anything. Now, I did try using Manjaro at first, but honestly, it just seemed like too much of a headache to get up and running. I was having to jump through hoops installing something as simple as Discord, and honestly, if that was going to set the tone for the rest of the install, then you can count me out of it because I just wanted something simple and I didn't want to have to jump through hoops to install such a simple program like Discord. So, as I mentioned, this had happened last week, and how have I been doing in that week? Well, I've been doing very well. Everything's been working like an absolute dream. The two games I play the most, which is Civilization 6 and Kerbal Space Program, have both been working like an absolute dream on Linux. Now, I know what you might say. These are slower, sort of not so action-packed games for the most part. But anyways, let's go ahead and look at a quicker, more action-packed game like CSGO. This game is also native to Linux, and honestly, I couldn't tell a difference between the Windows version and this version. Everything felt great and responsive. I couldn't tell any like graphical differences or anything like that. I was definitely at 144 FPS. I'm more than used to 144 FPS, and I can easily discern when it's not hitting 144. I can tell the difference between like 100 and 120 and 144. So we were running at 144 the entire time, and honestly, like I said, I could not tell the difference. Everything was working absolutely flawlessly. But a fair criticism for this too is, well, the three games you just talked about are all native to Linux. So what about games that aren't native to Linux? Well, there's this thing called Proton, and very simply, Proton allows you to play most Windows games on Linux. This is something that you can enable in your Steam settings, and the website right here that I'm showing is Proton Database. So you can basically just go on this site, look at what game you want to play on, that's usually a Windows game, and you can see how well it plays via Proton with Linux. And just from personal experience, I was playing Astroneer with a friend about 2 days ago, and I had no issues whatsoever, no crashes, no hiccups, no stutters or anything like that. But this website does a really good job at showing which games work great on Linux and which ones don't. The ones that you might have issues with is anything that has an anti-cheat software installed, so like PUBG, Rainbow Six Siege, what's another one? Smite, Scum, stuff like that. None of those are going to be able to work with Linux because the anti-cheat really just prevents anything from working properly. So what about games that aren't on Steam, that don't use Proton? Well, there's this other thing called Lutris, and Lutris is more or less the same thing. I believe this uses, for the most part, I believe it uses DirectX Vulkan, and it uses a version of Wine. to get your Windows games running. So you can do this for League of Legends, although I guess the current state is meh or whatever on Linux. But let's take something like Overwatch, for example. There's no native Linux port of Overwatch, but you can definitely get it running through Lutris. This is a video right here of me running Overwatch on Linux here via Lutris. Now, with this game, I genuinely don't know how to express it, but something did feel different about this game. It did look a little bit different graphically, although I'm not able to pinpoint any specific thing. And then also the controls, I don't know how to explain it, but it did feel different. And I would assume at least 500 hours or more on Overwatch at this point. I'm very familiar with how it feels on Windows, how it feels at 144 Hertz. And I was running at 144 Hertz here. The frame rate was good and all, but it felt different somehow. I don't know how to explain it. It was definitely graphical and control wise, if that makes sense. Like it looked different, it felt different, it played different. Aside from that though, it's definitely something that I could have gotten used to, and the experience was more than playable. I didn't see any graphical glitches or any bugs or hiccups or anything like that. So if you wanted to play Overwatch on Linux, you absolutely could. But just from my perspective, it did feel different in a way. And I would say, I don't know, if I had like a week with this game, maybe I could get used to the feel of it, but it didn't feel the same. It really didn't. Let's take a step back for a moment and chat about things that aren't gaming related. So how did everything else go besides the gaming? Well, honestly, it went really well. Most things worked right, quote unquote, out of the box. It was really like the first time I booted up, 90% of the things I had worked immediately. As for my audio, my microphone was detected immediately, and on Windows, I usually use Bluetooth headphones to game and stuff. And hilariously enough, Ubuntu actually pairs with my Bluetooth headphones much easier than Windows ever did. It feels like with Windows, it's always a nightmare trying to get them to pair for whatever reason, but with Ubuntu it was really smooth. My other display was detected immediately, and the interface for controlling resolution, refresh rate, all that fun stuff. It was very responsive, everything worked. I had no issues there, no issues at all. And Ubuntu does a really good job of laying out all the settings and stuff like that. It really like is so simple to use. One thing that I did have to set up manually, and if I'm being honest, I'm not even entirely sure if I had to set this up, because it was working right out of the gates as soon as I first booted into Ubuntu, and that was my graphics card drivers. But installing graphics card drivers is as simple as adding the repository and then running a simple sudo apt-get update, and then from there you just type sudo apt-get install NVIDIA and then a dash, and then you just specify which driver version you would like to install. I believe on my system I went ahead and installed driver version 4.15. There are two criticisms that I have being 1 week into Ubuntu. And the first one is the fact that, and this may just be a noob mistake, I really haven't taken the time to like Google if I'm doing this right, but it seems like I always have to mount a hard drive if I want to, like if I have Steam games installed on a different hard drive, the hard drives aren't immediately mounted. And you'll see me here, I'm going to click on one of them, and I have to click it to mount the drive, and then once it's mounted I can access the files inside. But that's something that I don't have to deal with on Windows, and if I have to mount the drive all the time, I feel like it's kind of annoying. But like I said, I haven't taken the time to research it. The other criticism I have, and really it's not a criticism of the platform itself, it's more of an inconvenience. It's that Linux does not really have a decent video editing software, or a software that would be a drop-in replacement for Adobe Premiere Pro. And I understand that there's Kdenlive and OpenShot and stuff like that, but Gardner from the Linux Gamer actually did a video on this, and there's really nothing comparable to the Adobe suite. I mean, if you're coming from Windows or Mac, you're pretty much going to have to relearn an entire software, and I would put myself in that category. I don't really want to take the time out of my day to go ahead and learn an entirely new video editing software. And that's pretty much the reason why I'm actually going to still have a Windows partition for two reasons, more or less. One is going to be for the Adobe suite, and the other is going to be for the games that don't usually work on Linux, like your PUBGs, your Apex Legends, and the games with anti-cheat. And that's really all I'm going to use Windows for. Aside from that, I'm going to switch to Linux almost fully. Am I saying you guys should switch to Linux for your daily driver as well? No, I'm not. That's an awful idea, and you should only do what works for you. The only reason I'm switching to Linux is because my Windows install just wasn't working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unfortunately, in my case, it was broke, and thus the basis for this video. That's going to wrap it up for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've used Linux before, let me know in the comments. Also, if you've gamed on it, let me know how that went as well. I'd love to get a discussion going down there. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and leave a dislike if you didn't. If you're not subscribed already, consider subscribing for more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.